How are you, Sheriff?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Okay. Hi, Mike.
Good, how you doing?
Good. Well, thanks for coming. We're announcing what I believe is a significant arrest, and I'm joined by Chief Shettenhelm of Rochester and Chief Emmy from Ferndale. They are both members and participants of the narcotics enforcement team, which wouldn't be as successful as it is without all of the agencies that participate and work side by side and bring these cases of this magnitude to a successful conclusion. In this particular case, it was a month-long investigation from the narcotics enforcement team that required a lot of work and kind of special tactics, which they did a great job with, and ultimately was concluded by taking 2 people into custody with 10 kilos of cocaine. One of the important topics of this particular arrest that I want to highlight is both of the individuals are in the country illegally. And for me and for lots of folks, that's a concern. As you know, I'm head of government affairs for Major County Sheriffs of America. And the Major County Sheriffs of America's position is that we must secure our border. Congress needs to step up, the administration needs to step up and secure the border. We believe too, the Major County Sheriffs of America, that we need a working immigration process so people that want to come to America have a expedited process that vets them and allows them a pathway to come to America either to work or live, and have a system that vets people properly and has a process that works. But having said that, the Major County Sheriffs of America and myself believe, first and foremost, you have to secure the border. If you don't have a secure border, you don't know who's coming in the country and what is coming in the country. Well, what we know is coming in the country for sure is a significant increase in drugs. The last briefing I got, fentanyl and other kinds of drugs crossing the border in the last year is up 43%. We know that deaths, overdoses, topped 100,000 people last year in America. And again, I believe a significant portion of that comes from illegal narcotics that have flown across the border or entered the country illegally. Of note, the 2 people charged in this, and we'll have pictures, the 2 biggest countries that seem to be crossing our desk as a point of origin for illegal fentanyl, opioids, or cocaine are Mexico and China. And one of our charged individuals, a Mexican national that is here, overstayed his visa, and the other is a Chinese national who is in the country illegally after being previously deported and returning. So clearly there is a nexus to what I'm talking about on that. These individuals were observed by undercover detectives. The one individual, Quintero, arrived at a location via an Uber and was seen carrying a duffel bag and approached and began a conversation with suspect Lee. And ultimately detectives moved in, and in the duffel bag was 10 kilos of cocaine. Lee was armed with a Taurus 9mm pistol, and the Uber driver was questioned but had no relation to the transaction and was not detained. Here are the components. Of that particular transaction. So not only was the individual in the country illegally, moving narcotics in the country illegally, but was possessing to protect that transaction an illegal firearm. So, again, first and foremost, proud of the narcotics enforcement team for their efforts to take $1 million worth of cocaine out of the community and off of the street. We have seen far too many people that have had their lives destroyed by addiction. We need a process to help them and not criminalize addiction, but certainly punish and prevent traffickers that are profiting off of the destruction of families and communities. Pretty short and sweet. This happened on April 21st in the late morning, not far from where we sit. Questions?
Can you get a little more specific on it? You mentioned a month. Were these two individuals being tracked for a month? Was it a location being tracked from a month, and where was it?
These individuals were being tracked in the area. Ultimately, the arrest was made not far from where we are. It was not location specific, but individuals.
Are you sharing at this time where this arrest was? Was it a hotel? Was it a?
No, it was out in the community. It wasn't location relational is what I'm trying to say.
Pontiac proper though, or?
Yes.
Okay. When you reference the statistics that you talked about with the fentanyl, and I'll go back and listen to it digitally, where is that sourced from when you say an increase over the past year?
I'm on conference calls all the time on the national level with Major County Sheriffs of America, with DHS, Homeland Security, and one of the last briefings I was on, that was a number that was cited by Homeland.
And not saying that's your purpose or what your inference is at all, so as I preload the question, obviously the border issue is a political hot button issue as well. I'm assuming first we're talking the southern border, and are you saying today that from what you're hearing, it's within the past year, or has this been a chronic problem over multiple administrations, or in particular recently?
Well, it has significantly gone up in the last year and a half, without question. I don't think anyone would question those numbers or question that fact. Yes, it is a political hotbed, but I would also point out that the Major County Sheriffs of America is made up of Republicans and Democrats, and we see things by issues and by facts, not based on politics. And we believe the borders need to be secured.
Understand. It said too a significant amount of.
And I'll follow up on yours, not just southern border, it's also northern border. Again, if you don't know who's coming in the country, you can't protect the country. You have to have a process to allow people to come in legally to work or to live. Agree with that 100%. Properly vetted processing. But the only person ever crossing a border to commit a terrorist act was caught at a northern border. So you need border security at all of your borders, but we know there has been a significant surge across the southern border of people of all origins. We know that, again, one of the last briefs I've got was that there's a number of people coming from terror watch list countries that are crossing the southern border, that they're flying into Mexico City and moving to the north to come across the southern border. So clearly the overwhelming numbers that are coming across that border are allowing people that we don't want to cross to come in with that crowd.
Sorry for stepping on you. I had two more. In regard to Mr. Lee, when you mentioned he was already in custody, previously exported or sent out of the country, but found his way back. Anything you can shed on that process in regard to how that can happen? Somebody that is flagged, sent back, and false ID maybe comes back, or do you have any idea?
But we don't know specifically at this point how he got back in, but again, when you have porous borders, there's no way of knowing who's coming in or out. He had been deported by federal authorities in 2006. So, clearly it was an intentional act to come back in and an intentional act to be involved in criminality.
And without compromising what you had going on as far as the investigation or may continue to have, can you shed any further light in regard to how you came upon these two, the month-long surveillance, what may have tipped you off if it isn't compromising?
Yeah, I can't go into some of the techniques that are used by the narcotics enforcement team, obviously, for a lot of reasons. We don't want to compromise future investigations.
Got it. My last one, locally, are you finding most of the cocaine, fentanyl coming from the southern border? Are there trends? Is it coming all from Windsor at all, or is it almost exclusively from the south coming into this area, or how it's trafficked?
I haven't seen a statistical breakdown. We know it comes across all borders and even comes through commercial mail. We know that a lot of stuff comes from China that has synthetic fentanyl in a variety of shipping processes and containers. So we need to secure ourselves from all points of access, whether it's shipping, whether it's airplanes, whether it's pedestrian crossings or trucks. Secure borders allow you to have a higher level of understanding of what's coming in and who's coming in, and we don't have that today. And clearly, having the spike in fentanyl and other kinds of drugs that are coming from across the world has led to a significant increase in deaths. We've saved close to 500 people just in the sheriff's office using Narcan.
Over what period of time? The last year?
No, since it became authorized by the state legislature, so that's a number of years.
This $1 million worth of drugs you've taken in as evidence, was it intended for distribution here or to be sent out for distribution in other Michigan and Ohio, these other places like that? Do you know if it was?
I believe it was intended for distribution here.
I've got a few questions. What is the connection between, I know they're both arrested within this particular transaction or whatever, but what, if any, connection can you tell us about these two to one another? Are they known to one another? Were they working independent of one another?
Probably we'll leave that for the court process because they're co-defendants. We're not gonna get too awfully into transactional activity.
What's their connection, if any at all, to Michigan or the metropolitan Detroit area? What brings them here?
Honestly, I don't know if they've got other contacts here that I could disclose at this point, probably not, or why they chose this point to traffic, but suffice to say, clearly they had.
And the person with the duffel bag, and I'm sorry, I didn't get their name and spelling, I don't know if that's on a release or something.
Yeah, we're gonna give you a release, the full name, spelling, and age. The person that got out of the vehicle was Quintero with the duffel bag.
And you believe Quintero was making a delivery of that?
He had the duffel bag containing this. There's the duffel bag.
And you speak of fentanyl and the heroin that you have. Has any of this been tested to see what, if any, content there is of fentanyl?
This did not have, it has been tested, did not have fentanyl in it. But that's one of the dangerous sources for people that have an addiction is they never know what they're getting. They may think they're getting just cocaine. They may think they're getting just heroin, and it may be laced with fentanyl for a kick. And that's how you're getting a lot of people that are being killed is they have no idea what's in it. There's obviously no quality control within the street trafficking organizations. They're just out to make a profit. This did not, to answer your question, have fentanyl in it, but did test obviously positive for cocaine.
Have these individuals been formally charged here now?
Yes, they're currently in our jail on, I believe, $1 million bond. You'll have that in the release too.
And you mentioned in the city of Pontiac proper, but you have obviously the chiefs from Rochester and Ferndale.
Mhm.
Can you explain?
Part of the narcotics enforcement team
Okay.
membership.
Okay.
They're two of the chiefs that assign officers to our team. We have a consortium team and I think 13 agencies at this point?
But it's not like it involved the communities of Rochester and Ferndale at all.
No. And it actually didn't specifically involve Pontiac as a city or anything. It was just the venue where the transaction culminated.
Okay.
Did you mention weapons? Did either of them have weapons?
Yes,
Sorry.
a 9mm handgun.
What's the speculation of this person using an Uber to get to their destination?
I didn't ask that question. I honestly don't have an answer for it. Maybe I can answer it offline if we know.
In terms of destination, them choosing this area, are there, I think somebody may have asked this question, so forgive me, do they have other connections outside of meaning up for this transaction, that you've been able to identify, like the reason that it's here and not Chicago?
Again, in terms of other connections, we're probably not gonna get into it at this point.
Not even like extended family, friends,
Yeah.
gangs,
No.
like that?
Thank you.
Appreciate it, sir.
Yep, and we'll get you a press release. Mug shots are all at the table.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.